Now I continue in 1 Timothy chapter number 3. A bishop then must be blameless, and I've dealt with that. Secondly, the husband of one wife. Number 3, vigilant. Number 3, vigilant. This area of vigilance, as I pointed out on yesterday, carries the idea of being aware. A vigilant man is one that watches, one that observes, one that has his eyes open. It is a requirement that the bishop be a vigilant man. Now, I think this is something that perhaps is missing in a large part from the modern church. Many times I pass by churches and I recognize now that there might be a financial difficulty or financial problem, and I understand that. But many times I go by churches and the lawn is unkept and the paint is peeling off the boxing on the building, and the gutters have not been cleaned out. The parking lot is in a general state of disarray. And I don't want to throw stones at a pastor or congregation that may financially just not be able to do the work that needs to be done. But many times it's simply because nobody's paying attention. I was preaching for a pastor one time, and he said, on occasion I'll drop a piece of paper on the sidewalk of our church deliberately on Sunday school. And he said, I'll stand back and observe the people passing between the buildings and notice how many people step over the paper or kick the paper aside, waiting for one of my members to stop long enough to reach down and pick the paper up and put it in their pocket or drop it in a trash can. And the matter of vigilance, one that has their eyes open. Solomon warned that in the book of Proverbs, a wise man foreseeth the evil and departeth. A wise man can see down the road. He can see what is out ahead of him. He can see what is in front of him. He is paying attention. He is observant. Now, my friend, a pastor would not be able to be vigilant concerning his local congregation if he's never there. A man that is doing the work of an evangelist and yet calling himself a should go on out into evangelism. And a pastor that would miss Sunday services and because he's on the road preaching in another pulpit. The church has a pastor so that that man can preach the sermons on Sunday morning. A man that is vigilant. A vigilant cattleman would observe his herd. He would observe his livestock. He would pay attention to the livestock, to their well-being, and to their health. And if he sees that his livestock is becoming sick or weak or something is wrong with them, then he's aware of it and is able to address it. And so it is with the pastor, the bishop of a congregation. He is to be paying attention, vigilant. He's to have his eyes open. Then again, Paul goes on further. The bishop then must be blameless. Number 2, the husband of one wife. Number 3, vigilant. Number 4, sober. Obviously, the Apostle Paul would be referring to the matter of strong drink and alcohol. A man that, and we're going to find something about that in verse number 3, not given to wine. In this passage, I don't think the context, I don't think the matter of sober is soberness. Although if I knew my pastor drank alcoholic beverages, I would not be a member of that church. I would not be able to sit in a congregation where the pastor consumed alcoholic beverages. Now, what I've said 25 or 30 years ago, my brethren would have said, now what's the point of making that statement? But we are living in an age today where it is debated among some so-called fundamentalists concerning whether or not it is all right for the believer to consume alcoholic beverages. I live in Greenville, South Carolina, and it was argued about at a point of debate among some men within the last 10 or 15 years. I'm talking about among fundamentalists, whether or not it was proper or okay for a believer to drink wine with his meal. Well, now, the Bible says, wine is a mocker, strong drink is raging, and whosoever is deceived thereby is not wise. I would never be able to work as a clerk in a convenience store because I would have to sell alcoholic beverages across the counter to people that came in to buy them. And Habakkuk says, woe unto the man that giveth the bottle to his brothers, putteth the bottle to his brother's lip. This matter of soberness among ministers of the gospel and among congregants has become an issue in our day. And there is some debate among those in our congregations concerning the matter of social drinking and the consuming of alcoholic beverages. I'm a teetotaler's teetotaler. I've never had a drop of alcohol in my body in my life, and I plan to die without ever having taken my first drink. I will never become an alcoholic. There's a lot of things I might become, but I'll never become an alcoholic, because every alcoholic took his first drink. At some point in his life, he took his first drink. And I can never become an alcoholic because I've never had my first drink. Now, I think in the context, the matter of soberness is not a reference to alcohol, but rather is a reference to one's attitude or thinking or deportment. He is to be sober. Paul the Apostle has much to say about the believer being sober-minded. I have observed in the last 3 or 4 years enough to make me sick on Twitter. Not Sky Angel and the Pentecostal satellites. I'm talking about Twitter. What I've observed, what's been sent to me on Twitter from churches, pastors preaching in their pulpits. And there's enough here to nauseate me. And some of these men, in my estimation, are nothing more than second-class comedians. They are second-rate entertainers. And I think that there's an idea and an attitude that is being propagated among young ministers that if they don't have an ability to entertain a congregation or to keep a congregation amused, then they're not, they're not preaching. Some of these guys are second-rate entertainers, and some of them, I wonder if they were actually not better entertainers, if they would leave the ministry and try to go to Nashville or Hollywood or some other place and try to open up or get into an entertainment business, get into an entertainment profession, and just entertain people and tell jokes and make people laugh as a means of paying their bills and generating an income. Sober-minded. The man of God, the bishop, is to have soberness in his mind. He is to be of a sober deportment. I've been around some people, some preachers, and they're jokesters. They just tell jokes all the time and yarns and just one-liner after another one-liner. And I've been around a few men that were genuinely funny. They were genuinely funny people. But they were not that way all the time. They didn't wear you out with just a bunch of nonsense and a bunch of foolishness. A man that is given to that is not a man that's given to a sober mind. I need to understand that the door I have enjoyed all of these years, and the door I have, and the door I am sincerely grateful for, could close. I need to recognize, I need to have enough soberness, sober-mindedness, to understand that this door that I've enjoyed for 26 years, this door that is 77 years old, the Bright Spot Hour, has been on the air without a break for 77 years. But there was a time when the Bright Spot Hour was not, and there may well be a time when the Bright Spot Hour will not be. And I need to understand that. Sober-mindedness. I need to be sober-minded enough to recognize that I could contract a disease and die. I would hope to have 30 more years to live, and 30 more years to serve, and 30 more years to preach, and 30 more years to work and to labor. I would love to have 30 more years of service. But I may have a disease working in my body right now that I'm not aware of that will put me in the grave within the next 12 months. Sober-mindedness, sober. A preacher that is sober-minded will himself stay out of unnecessary debt. And it will not lead his church into unreasonable debt. I remember the phenomena, the megachurch movement phenomena of the 1970s and 80s. And there were where they sold bonds to build great mega works, and built those mega works around singing and around bus ministries. And many of those congregations, they didn't grow, they swelled. You know, you hit a deer on the side of the road, and that deer will swell up to 2/3 its normal size. It'll swell up in addition, because it's full of gas. It's not full of structure and bone and muscle mass. It's full of gas, hot air. And in some point it'll burst open, and you'll smell it for a country mile, and it'll disintegrate and go away. A lot of works I remember in my ministry in the 70s and 80s were into this mega movement. And there were works that didn't exist, and in 5 years of running 2,500 in Sunday school, and they lasted about 3 or 4 years, 5 years, and dissolved and went away. And there were many men that led their churches and financially made shipwreck of their congregations, leading them into such as this. That is not sober-mindedness. That is not a prayerful consideration and sober-mindedness. If a church needs to go into a building program, praise God, do it. And borrow the money if you have to, and go into that building program. But it is required of the bishop that he be sober, that there be a sober-mindedness. I've been around some preachers, and they can't preach for laughing and telling jokes. It's all the time cutting funnies and telling jokes. As far as I'm concerned, a man like that is not qualified. He doesn't meet the qualifications of the bishop. Are you going to cut funnies and tell jokes at a funeral? Or cut funnies and tell jokes at a wedding? He is to be sober. And that will enable that man, sober-mindedness, being sober, will enable that man to lead his congregation circumspectly, to guide the flock and to lead the flock in such a way that they will not become embarrassed, and that he himself will not become embarrassed by his unnecessary antics and his thoughts and actions that are not sober. The Lord willing, tomorrow I'll pick up with the matter of good behavior.
At Post Office Box 4, Greenville, South Carolina 29602. This is